I go home a particular night, Pastor Lott calls. He said, Brother David, we need to talk. I asked him, I said, is everything okay? He said, no. He said, when are you going to have some free time? I told him, I said, for you, you just name it. And so he said, can you come by tomorrow night around 1:30 in the morning? And I'm like, 1:30 in the morning? He says, you told me that I could choose the time. He said, so I expect you to be there, brother, okay? I'm like, yes, sir. So as I said before, whenever one of the elders of the church invite you to grace their home, not only do you have to be on your very best behavior, but you have to be on your very best dress code. And so I got myself together and I went and I visited Pastor Lott. And he sat me down in his living room again. And he said, I was told that you are currently congregating with the man who calls himself a prophet, Nathaniel Dodd. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, I also recall you telling me that you were going to go into isolation for a while. I said, yes, sir, I said it. He said, why are you there with this man? He said, because he's dangerous, dangerous. And I told him, I told him I met Richard and everyone at at work and everything. He said, son, you know that I never try to tell another grown man what to do. He said, but in your journey going through this, he said, it is best that you be very careful and attentive. Pay attention to everything. He said, pay attention to words and meanings and everything. He said, because you are getting ready to go on a very important lesson. He said, you are getting ready to learn about the false prophets that Jesus had said that will come in his name. He said, do you believe that this man is a prophet? And I told him, no. He said, well, then why are you there? And I couldn't answer why I was there. He said, this is why it's a lesson that you must learn. He said, be careful. He said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. He said, but the truth will come to you. If you pay enough attention, he said, the truth will come to you. And so him and I, we embraced, and he shook my hand and he said, asked me, he said, I see you again? I'm like, of course. Yes, sir. Of course. And so I left. Me and Richard became very close, and James. So one time him and James, and they were stuck someplace. I just came out of them, and I had a vehicle. And so they came and said, hey, Dave, can you give us a lift home? I said, of course. So I dropped Richard and James off at his place because James was going to stay over to his place a little later. And so what I noticed about Richard's living condition, and Richard is a married. his living condition was no, he had a very small, I would say a shoebox shaped home. And as we were talking, it was almost like he could sense that I was looking around. And this is the same man who was telling me that I would be blessed. And I heard Dee Dee said that, and everyone was talking about how much they've been blessed by Prophet. And so I'm looking, and it's like Richard was telling me, Prophet was telling me that I'm going to be blessed with a big house and everything. I'm like, oh, okay. And the following week, we had me and Richard and Jane, we had made one, or at least Richard did one, with God to come by his home. And so his home was a little bit further out North Las Vegas in this beautiful neighborhood that had almost miniature mansions. And so when we knocked on the door, he opened up the door and he said, "Come on in." He said, "Oh, so we got neighbors?" Which I said, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." And so when we walked up in his home, what I noticed was that he had a lot of Asian-related furniture. Samurai, he has samurai swords. Very expensive. Two-story home, looks like a miniature mansion. He had all of these Asian artifacts in there, which implied this man's got a lot of money. He has a lot of money. And so we set up and we talked to him that night. We had a beautiful time. His wife cooked and everything. And I had enjoyed myself. And I felt good about that night without realizing that good feeling, that pleasantness, and that the food, eating in his home added to me being reeled in even further, because that gave me a chance to look at the environment of the home. And as we're walking to my car, I'm dictating on where I'm going to put some brothers to protect us. And so what I noticed is that a lot of the people in the church were living very low standards, and he was living like a king. He was living like a king. And that's what I noticed. Just the people who I came in contact with turned personal. And so, but anytime that I would get off to myself, I would think about what Pastor Lot told me. And when Pastor Lot said, "The truth will come to you." And I'm searching myself and I'm like, okay, I had a good time. I'm enjoying the friendship with Richard. I'm building a liking to this man. There's something uneasy, something is still wrong, regardless. And that was the void inside of where, when the truth came, it would take a seat there. So when the truth came to me, I scheduled a meeting with Richard, Vernon, Dee Dee. I wanted to schedule a private meeting with them over to my place, because I had found something in the scriptures that had implied that a prophet is not cultivated by the environment of the world. A prophet is created and ordained a prophet in the womb of its mother and not of the world. And I wanted to share that information with them to help them understand that we are all under a false prophet according to the scriptures. Even though Pastor Lot gave me that warning and told me that I was in danger, and yet still understood that what I was being ventured through was by God, and for me to understand and to know the false prophet. But I still hadn't got it yet. You know, when he asked me, "Will I see you again?" And I told him yes. Some asked, why would he ask you that? Because I have a flaw inside. Sometimes when I'm feeling good about something, and even though someone see an error in my ways and yet still don't want me to be totally succumbed by it because they see my passion and my dedication into it. Sometimes when they still have enough love inside for me to still warn me, and when they can sense that I haven't really got it yet, something that there is a possibility that I may leave without telling them that a certain information I took offense to. And so sometimes I don't show up anymore because I be so dedicated and I be so comfortable at what I'm doing. Sometimes I don't want to hear anything at that particular moment. And so he asked me, will I see you again? And I told him yes. And when I told him that, I was honest. And so going forward, as the previous video said, I was thinking about protecting him, but having these open conversations with Richard and them, you know, I'm sharing my life and my struggles with him and my take on the scriptures and everything. Him transmitting this information back to God obviously made God feel uncomfortable or threatened. And so as it was when I had experienced Exalt, which was actually after this experience, as Brother Angel was trying to demoralize me, this is what God started to do in the company of the congregation. I recall my having a conversation with Richard about Shalon one time that I had I showed up at one of the sermons at the West Side Library. I went alone. And I went in the rows and I sat down. And I noticed that someone was looking back at me about 7 rows down off to the left. And I looked down and it was Shalon looking up at me. And she smiled and I smiled at her. And I'm thinking to myself, you never know. I just could be looking at my wife, future wife. I mean, the same as Prince, Brother Prince, rest in peace, had said of his wife, Mayte, when he saw her for the first time. He said, that's my future wife. That's a very common and human response or gesture. Is not saying that that's going to be my wife, because that's not what I'm in. You know, I felt as though I was in the company of very good people. I felt that even though this man tells the world that he's a prophet, what I've gained from listening to him was a preacher who spoke well, who knew the scriptures very well, who would advise his congregation on what they should do. It was a very complicated situation, but I felt good where I was. I felt like this could grow into something. And we all have our flaws that we need to work on. But the only thing in this case is that this man wasn't trying to work on it. He was using his intelligence, he was using his brilliance, and he was using everything that God gifted him with in order to take advantage and to steal from his own congregation. And so I had told Richard about that. You know, I told him, you know, I saw Shalon, she looked up at me and smiled, and I smiled back at her, you know, and I had told Richard, hey man, you never know, that could be my future wife. So he goes back and he tells Dot, up on top of everything else that I've been sharing with him, he gets up in the pulpit and he says something like, this guy saying that I was looking at my wife, he done lost his mind. And I'm like, wow, bro, that was totally innocent, you know? And even Richard had said, well, you never know, bro. But he goes back and he tells him that was something that was totally innocent. Back in those times, I used to wear Indian jewelry. I used to wear neck chokers. I go to hear him speak at Rock of Deliverance. He looked out, he saw that I was wearing some Indian jewelry. He makes a comment, people are walking around here trying to be everything else except black. So, you know, I would hear certain things like that. Now, most would say, well, he wasn't, do you feel as though he was talking about you? No, he wasn't talking about me. But that comment was referred to my wearing Indian jewelry. My wearing Indian jewelry is not a representation that I'm trying to assert that I am not of the black community. I am of two communities. Native and Black over here in America. There was another time where he was telling people to hold up their hand, and I can read you and tell you what's going on with you inside and your flaws. And he was going around telling people where they were either messed up mentally or physically. I raised my hand because within myself, I couldn't think of anything that was wrong about me, which was very dangerous. And so I raised my hand. I knew that I had some flaws, but I didn't think that my flaws were that bad because I was there working on my flaws. Now, this man who was supposed to uplift, when I raised my hand, he came over and he put his finger in the middle of my hand and he said, mentally and physically, I was messed up mentally and physically. So this is another shot at me in front of everyone in the church. I said, okay, there's something going on here. So obviously I'm not welcoming. Why don't you just say, Brother David, lead? We would rather you lead. And I will, But it had gotten to the point to where I was taking a lot of verbal abuse indirectly. And when you say indirectly, people will assert that, well, obviously you felt as though he was talking about you. No, because all of these accusations were coming from conversations that I was having with his right-hand man, Richard. And see, all of this began when I had tried to cultivate a meeting between all of us privately at my place so that I could show them what it says in Jeremiah, to where it asserts that a prophet is conceived and ordained in the womb of a woman. God had claimed that he was a pimp. He was a drug dealer. He even had said one time a pastor had convinced one of his prostitutes to come up in his church to change her life. And this woman was in the choir singing. And he said, according to him, that he went up in the church while they were having choir rehearsal. He pulled out his gun and he put it to the pastor's head and he told him, you don't be messing with my money. And he told this woman who succeeded in turning her life around, and he made her leave with him and back into the world, and he put her back on that corner. Now, when I heard that, so this man used to be a pimp. And then things started coming to me, some of the things that he was saying, his demands of money from his congregation. And it came to myself, I'm like, this man is still a pimp. This man is still a pimp. And so I took a break. I believe I stopped going for about a month. But I was still at New York with Richard and and everybody, and we were still maintaining a friendship. Everyone, especially Richard, was wondering how come I hadn't been. He said, Prophet is looking for you. He's wondering how come you haven't been here. And he had mentioned that he had brought me up in one of his sermons, and he was telling the congregation that whenever Brother David comes around, y'all don't show him any love. However, this is the same man who would try to tear me down and demoralize me before all of these people. And so I told Richard, I'm like, he said that? And he said, yeah. And he's wondering where you've been. And I just told Richard and him, I just needed to take some time off, for some studying and everything. And that was the first time that I opened up, and I told Richard that what happened to me in the ministry and how I had went into an isolation period. And so I broke my isolation period to serve with them. And this is how I came out of my isolation period. So I came out of my isolation period twice. First with Nathaniel Dodd, and then second with Exalt Ministries. And so as time went on, I found myself at work, and my memory started going over some of the things I would hear him preach about. And I could actually hear this man's voice in my mind as I was working. And because of that, I started missing God. And I wanted to hear some more of his teachings. But the conflict within me was still knowing that this man is a false prophet. And so it grieved me. And so one night, unannounced, I believe it was close to 3 o'clock in the morning, I drove over to Elder Pastor Lott's house. And I just pulled up in front of his home. And I just sat there. And I was thinking, it was improper to even come there unannounced. But I sat in front of his house for at least 45 minutes. And suddenly, my cell phone rang. I answered it, and it was Pastor Lott. He said, Brother David, are you going to come in, or are you just going to sit out there all night? And I didn't answer. He said, come on in, brother. And so I got up, and he invited me in. And of course, I was properly dressed, because I wouldn't go nowhere near Elder Lott unless I was properly dressed, properly groomed, and everything. He answered the door and he let me in. When I walked in, I looked to the side, and his fireplace was burning. So he was obviously watching me, and he turned on his fireplace. And when I came in, he said, would you like something to drink? He said, I have cranberry juice, I have apple juice, or coffee. He said, which would you prefer? And so I asked him, I told him that I would like some cranberry juice, because I have this fetish for cranberry juice. And so he went and he got me a glass of cranberry juice. And as he was walking towards me with the glass of cranberry juice, he said, "Sit down, brother. Why are you standing up? Standing up." I said, "I'm not going to sit down until you sit down, sir." And he just started laughing. He gave me the cranberry juice. He sat down in his comfort, and I took a drink of the cranberry juice, and he saw that I was looking over at the fire. And he didn't say anything. And so I think it was like 2 minutes. Then he said, "What's troubling you, son?" And I just started tearing up. And so I was telling him, I'm very deep into this. As you said, that was not a good thing, and you told me that this would happen to me. And he said, "Right." And I told him, "I don't know how to get out of it." And he said, "Yes, you do." He said, "But it's not time." He said, "Your lesson is not complete yet." He said, "It's not time for you." He said, "This is a journey that you're going to have to go through in order to learn a person like this." He said, "I don't see any other brothers out here in the church going through this." He said they come there and they record him, and that's it. But they never speak to him. He said, "You are right there. You're experiencing this lesson. You're experiencing this." And so, as we talked, he was telling me that what you're going through right now is very important. It's very profound. And you have to go through this. For all of us. He said, because you're going to talk about this one day. And he said that you have to go through this. He said, the way that you feel, he said, from my vantage point, he said, I think that your closeness and care for this man is based upon the care and closeness that you didn't receive from your father, whom is a pastor. He said, and I've watched you ever since I've known you, Brother David. And he said, you want to do the work so bad. He said, sometimes you compromise your own moral principles in order to do that. He said, and that puts you in a state of confusion as you are right now. He said, but confusion is only temporary until you learn. He said, you have this strong desire to want to be used for something. And he said, even that can be dangerous. He said, because you put yourself in a very vulnerable position to where your strong willingness to be used for the sake of the gospel. He said, you leave yourself vulnerable to be manipulated and used by men as such. He said, that is why. He said, you recall when I asked you, why are you there? And you told me, Brother David, that you didn't know. He said, you won't know from him or any of them. He said, you will only know when you start looking within. at your own pain and at your own desires and at your own lust and wanting to be used for something. He said, you have a lust of wanting to be used. And he said, and you know, lust is never a good characteristic, because when you're lusting for something and when you're desiring something, he said the dual component of desire will forever be pain. The dual component for lust will forever be confusion and pain. He said, you're there because there's a lot of things going on inside of you that you have to get a grip on. Now, he said, there's no doubt that this man and what he's doing is evil by moral standards and by the teachings of Yeshua. He warned all of us about men as such. You're in this. He said, and only you can get yourself out. The moment you look inside and be completely honest to yourself, brother, then it's the only way that you're gonna get out. He said, you already know what to do. So open up your eyes, look inside and be honest with yourself. Be completely honest with yourself. He said, I knew that I would see you again. And I knew that you would keep your word. He said, so when I looked outside, when I came downstairs to get some water, I saw you sitting out there. He said, I came downstairs, I lit the fireplace, and I sat by the window and I watched you sit in your car. And he said, the moment I saw the tears in your eyes, I said to myself, it's time. And so that's when I called you, because I knew that you were at a breaking point and you needed guidance. And so that's why you're here. And that is why I'm seeing you again. And so I just sat there and I drunk in everything that he said. He said, I don't need to advise you on what to do. He said, you already know what you need to do. He said, you already know. He said, but I will sit here with you for as long as you need me to. He said, because I'm your brother in Christ. He said, and I love all those who love the brotherhood. I love all of those who love the brotherhood. And so I sat there and I looked over at this man. And I've never seen such a beautiful human being. He didn't have to let me in. He didn't have to say those things to me. But all of that was love. And it was some things that I really needed to hear at that time, because I was in too deep to not understand it. You know, I mean, it's like someone falling inside of a pool that is 6 to 10 feet deep, and they're sinking. And the reason why they're drowning is because they don't have the knowledge of how to swim. And that's how I was feeling. I was feeling like I was drowning. And so we sat there and we talked for another 5 minutes. And after which, he looked over at me and he smiled. He said, "Are you okay now, brother?" He looked at me like this. "You okay now, brother?" "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." And so he stood up, did like this, and he looked at me in the eyes and he was shaking my arms like this. He said, "Now, go forth and learn of this experience." He said, "And don't seek to harm no one." He said, "Because you're not there to harm anyone. You're there to learn." He said, "Because you are right there." He said, "You don't come there with your tape recorder or anything like that. Just get up and leave. Like a person who was uninvited to someone's home and just come in there and sit down and listen to what's being said. And don't say anything and just get up and leave." He said, "You're right there." He says, "So just keep your eyes open." And he said, "Every storm passes." He said, "And this one is going to pass." And so when I left, we embraced and I left. And when I was on my way home, I was driving across the city to my home. And I started thinking about Brother Malcolm X. Because I had gotten some information from a reliable source, and I won't mention her name because I'm not certain if she's still around this man. And I agree with him saying that this man is dangerous. And so as I was driving, all of a sudden, I was thought about Brother Malcolm and his love for Elijah Muhammad and how he looked so highly up to Elijah Muhammad. As I started looking up to this man who calls himself a prophet, I thought about how Malcolm felt when he first heard the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for the first time. I thought about when I first heard him at the Westside Library. His humility, equivalent to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm spoke of it. I looked up to him, even though I didn't call him a prophet. My actions towards him and my feelings and my willingness to protect this man asserted that I believed him, even though I didn't verbally say it. Willing to put my life on the line for him. Willing to make sacrifices for him. Willing to protect him verbally against any other pastors that would speak ill of him. Even though they verbally said that he was a false prophet, they never challenged him. You know, no one called for a meeting. No one invited him to a pastor's meeting to where he could state his case. There was nothing going on but just a whole bunch of criticism. And when people saw me associating myself with him, they were saying, how could Brother David be around a man as this. When they failed to realize one of the reasons why I was in his company is because I was rejected by their company for absolutely no reason. And see, this is one of the reasons why the brotherhood is so important. We can't just call ourselves brothers and not practice the brotherhood. The same as a marital couple cannot say that they're married, but they lack having a marriage. I mean, it's the same. Everything is action. Action. It just can't be spoken principles without action. The principles of action is not what you say, it's what you do. It's what you do. That's what it's about. And so, as I was driving home, after this information got back to me that he was not only sleeping with Shalon, but he was sleeping with her friend Kim, who I knew. He was sleeping with both of them because they were sharing the same apartments because no one could afford to get their own. And so he would go by there, creeping at night. He was sleeping with both of them. He wasn't only sleeping with both of them, but he was sleeping with other women in the church. And I understood how Malcolm felt when he heard about Elijah Muhammad's secretaries. I understand what Malcolm felt when he went around and he questioned all of these women who bear children by Elijah Muhammad. Now, I didn't go around and converse with Shalon or Kim or any of them. As a matter of fact, I knew that I couldn't, because at work, there was an instance when me and Shalon was talking and she was saying that she wanted to go to a concert or something like that. And I told Shalon, go ahead and go. You know, if that's what you want to do. She said, well, I don't want Prophet to find out and I don't want Prophet to be mad at me. I said, Shalon, he's your pastor, he's not your father. And oh my God, when I said that it almost killed her. She started crying. And I'm like, what did I say? I told Richard about that incident because she bumped into Richard after I talked to him about it. Richard gets on the phone and he calls Dodd. Next sermon in the church, he says this young man is, you know, he's an indirect speaking type man. He said this young man says that he's your pastor and he's not your father. Young man, I've been a father figure to these young people for years. And everybody in the church was, yes, sir, yes, sir. And something says, stand up. Because I'm right here. You can say that right to me. However, I remember the words of Lot. Go through it. Suddenly I got this vision of me being on a boat, floating down the river, and the river is guiding me. And I'm looking at everything, it's beautiful, the water is clear, which implies clarity. I was able to see all the way down. And right when I was getting ready to put my fingers in the river, which was carrying me, I heard the Creator say, no, just let it flow. Let it flow. Don't interfere. So that moment, I perceived that of that vision, and it transmitted to my mind, don't say anything. Just leave it be. Just leave it be. You're here to learn. You're not here to challenge anything, because that's nothing. That means absolutely nothing. Because he's up there asserting that he's a father figure to these young women, and yet you're sleeping. You're sleeping with them. You're the father figure. And you're sleeping with these young women who you assert you are a father figure to, so you're laying with your daughters. Have you not understood why Jesus called Mary Magdalene daughter? Now, I'm not saying that Shalon and Kim and all the rest of these women were prostitutes. However, they were allowing themselves to be utilized as though they were prostitutes. And yet still, he was asserting that these women and these two young ladies were daughter figures to them, and you're a father figure to them. And so you're saying that these women are daughter figures to them, daughter figures to you, but you're sleeping with them. The false prophet. It's all false. So as time went on, I noticed these things. And so I said, okay. And so there was an elder pastor there. I'm first mentioning him. His name was Brother John. He was an older gentleman. He also worked at New York with us. And so I kept my distance from Richard and James, but not rudely. And so it was one night. Elder Brother John came. He sat at my table and he asked me, he said, "Brother David, where have you been?" He said, "We haven't seen you in 2 months." He said, "Prophet wants to know what's going on." And see, a man who was threatened by your presence, and he's threatened by your intelligence and your wisdom and your mind. Of course, a man like that wants to know, where is this person? So he can kind of keep tabs through his other members, because he knows that some information got back to you. So I told Brother John, I've decided to just take a break, and he said, "Well, everyone misses you," he said, and Prophet was asking about it. And so I opened up and I had shared with him some of the things that I was hearing about him messing around with women in the church, and a friend of mine who works at the casino out on the outskirts of Las Vegas, which is the border. He would see him out there all the time gambling everyone's money. And so Pastor John noticed that while I was sharing this information with him, my disappointment of him set in. And I broke down and I was crying, and I told Pastor John, I'm not going to lie, I miss him. I said, I miss that man. And he said, "Well, why don't you come back?" I said, "I can't." I said, "Because I don't believe that he's a prophet." And Pastor John looked at me, and I told him, I pulled out and I went to the book of Jeremiah, where it talks about the prophet being ordained in the womb of a woman and not cultivated by the world or ordained by the missionaries or the seminaries of the world. You are only ordained by way of God and God alone. And that transpires in the womb of a woman, and not by the world. Nor can you say, I was a drug dealer, I was a pimp, and I was otherwise. And one morning, God stood before me, or Jesus stood before me and said, I ordained thee a prophet, when you are already outside the womb of your mother. That's not the way it works. I said, and if you look at all of the prophets in the Bible, Brother John, I said, go through the Bible. And if it's one thing you will notice, that the prophets of old were first messengers. These men were messengers. They were ordained in the womb of their mothers a prophet because they were messengers. And he said, what do you mean? I said, these men were brought into the world with a very high insight, and the Spirit of God and the wisdom of God and the intellect of God, intelligence of God was with these men. And these men observed everything the same way Jesus told his disciples, observing all things. But God gave them a prophecy inside of their minds that the Messiah would soon come and fulfill everything that the messengers said. And when the fulfiller comes and fulfills everything that the messenger said, the fulfiller is the one who verifies the messengers as prophets. When Yeshua comes and he fulfills what the messenger says, he verifies them as prophets. He's the fulfiller. And he says that there will be false prophets who will come after me, who will come in my name. That's what God and other men like him do. They come and assert to be followers of Jesus. He even said in one of his sermons, there's power in that name. There's power in the name of Jesus. There's power in that man's name. What power? Power to manipulate people, to use the love of the masses that they have for Christ against them, that you may prosper. I went to the man's house. He's prospered by using the power that is within that man's name to take advantage of the love that the people have for Jesus in order to extract wealth. Not for them. These blessings had not shown up. But when you go to his home, he's living beautifully. How many men do you see in the body of Christ right now are living like that, who call themselves prophets or motivate themselves as though they're prophets, even if they don't say that they're prophets? They're living on a high horse while everyone else is living down low. That's exactly. And I told him, we were going through his Bible, and I told him, go to Exodus. And see, this is based upon the meeting that I wanted with everyone else. I told him, go to the book of Exodus and study all of these men. And they never verbally said that they were prophets. They were messengers. They were messengers and they were not married. They didn't have families. They didn't have families. They didn't have wives. And they never said, I am a prophet, a self-ordained prophet or self-proclaimed prophet. They spoke a message and they told the people what's going to come in terms of the Messiah coming to fulfill what the messenger talks about. Now, after he came and fulfilled all of those things, he said there would be false prophets that were going to come after me. So who are you people? And then you have John the Revelator in the book of Revelations, who is prophesying about what is going to transpire in the last day. Okay. After Jesus fulfilled what the messenger said and verified the messengers as prophets. And if he says there will be false prophets that were going to come after me, the false prophets who self-ordained themselves as prophets, the one who are claiming that they had a worldly life and then all of a sudden they become prophets. Those are the ones who are false. And when John the Revelator comes and he prophesies for in the book of Revelation of the last day, everything is covered. So you people who call yourselves prophets, this Prophet Nathaniel Dodd, Prophet Pastor John Veal, all of these people who utilize the title prophet right there in the word, you are revealed as the false prophets because you have nothing to prophesy about. Nothing. You have nothing to prophesy about. Everything is covered. Yeshua fulfilled everything that the messengers talked about. And he told the world there will be false prophets that will come after me in my name. He said that. See, the problem with the world today and the problem with the body of Christ today is because you follow Paul and you do not follow Jesus or Yeshua, whatever name you want to use. You follow Paul. Paul was the one who claimed that there are going to be prophets, and no. Need for prophets. Yeshua fulfilled everything. And you got John the Revelator. And we're going into our last days. And he has already prophesied of the ending times. And you can see that today. So what do you have to prophesy about? Other than Yeshua prophesying about you, the false prophets. When I showed Pastor John that, he was amazed. And he said, Brother David, this is not only making sense, this is true. He said, this is true. And all the times that I was down there listening to this man, he would always have Pastor John up there sitting next to him. And I flat out told Pastor John that very lunch break, you might say, at the job. I said, you would never speak. I said, he will always speak because he doesn't need you. You're just there for show. For what reason would you be there? He speaks. He asks for money. He doesn't even need you there to ask for money. Why are you there? Brother John, I said, you want to know why you're there? Because you have something to say to the world. And you are caught in his spider web. And as long as you're up under that man, you will not fulfill your purpose in the body of Christ. That's what I told him. Now, even though I broke down and said that I missed the man, I still knew that I have to let go. Yeah, I grew close to Richard. I grew to be real good friends with Vernon and James. I love Dee Dee because I've known Dee Dee for years. I've known her for years. But my friendship with Dee Dee is not worth risking my soul. It's not worth it. He said there would be false prophets that will come after me. And here he comes, calling himself not only a prophet, but the prophet of God. How can you be the prophet of God and not say that you're trying to say that you are the fulfiller? Now, people may say, well, how? Why do you say that? Because Yeshua prophesied of people like him that were going to come after him. So he was a Messiah. He fulfilled what the messenger said, and he prophesied of prophets who were going to come in his name. And he said they will be false prophets who will come in my name. And after that, John the Revelator. As I explained to Brother John, it's right there. So I had to learn how to detach myself from him. Because the false prophet speaks well. He speaks cleverly. He has a tremendous insight of the word. Pardon me, 1 second. I'm sorry, I had to answer a very important phone call. But getting back, prophets are not created from a worldly environment, as I said before, and as the word implies, it tells you that in the book of Jeremiah. You are ordained by God in the womb of a woman. You're not ordained a prophet by another so-called prophet who is nothing but a pastor. You are not ordained a prophet in seminary. That's against scripture. And not only is it against scripture, it is against divine insight. And what I mean by that is that the messengers are ordained prophets inside of the womb of their mother. Therefore, they already have a divine insight. When they come into society, they are not educated by the world. Their ordainment inside the womb of the mother, that is their education. That is their purpose. Their purpose is to articulate the world, to observe the world. They have a strong insight when it comes to cause and effect. And the divine insight that they are given by God of a fulfiller coming, it makes total sense to their insight and intelligence. And this is the reason why when they look at the world, they are able to know that the only way that this is going to be resolved is that the fulfiller has to come. And so they have this divine message sitting up in them of all nations. It says of all nations, all creeds, all languages. So there's messengers all over. But the whole thing is, there were prophets all over, pardon me, that were given a divine message and a divine insight to be able to articulate the message so that when the fulfiller comes, they will be graduated into being prophets. That's the way it works. You can't be a drug dealer and a pimp and all of a sudden you wake up and you're this prophet, and you have people that's believing that the false prophet gets his or her power by the belief of the people. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. So I told Brother John, I explained it to him, and it was the same lesson that I was going to share at my place personally, to at least give people a chance to know exactly what they were in. So after that, I was getting messages because obviously Pastor John went there and he shared this information with him. All of a sudden, there were threats coming out of the church at me saying that if I ever come down there to the church, I'm gonna, something bad's gonna happen. So one night, ego took over. Anger and ego, Anchor said, what? Ego said, go down there and make yourself known. And so I'm driving down there because, hey, I was going to show up and hey, I was told that if I come down here, something bad's going to happen. But when I saw this visual inside of myself, as Pastor Lott told me, look within, I didn't see nobody but a fool. Is that fear? No. Did I feel as though I had anything to prove to God or his followers? No. If you don't have anything to prove and you see that your motivation is of a foolish man, what is there left of you and this man to even talk about? Nothing. So I never showed up again. And as time went on, I started affiliating myself with the Nation of Islam because I love those brothers down there. And one day I was getting off work and I was picking up my paycheck. Shalon, and it was another young lady down there named Ebony. I had on a suit and a bow tie. And so as I was picking up my check, I walk in there while they were picking up theirs, and I heard Shalon. And Ebony said, "You see him? You see him?" So now I'm hated because I don't follow a man that you're following. I'm asserted to follow Elijah Muhammad now because I'm suited up as a Muslim. I mean, what's the problem? What's the problem? I'm very good friends with the Nation of Islam, and I've never been ashamed of it. Never been ashamed. And so as time went on, I went back into my isolation period. And I conversed with Pastor Lot, and I told him, I thanked him for all of the guidance and the advice and the love that he showed me. And so he asked me, so what are you going to do from here, Brother David? I told him, I'm just going to go back into my isolation period. And go from there, sir. And so that's when I went back into my isolation period. And it took me a while, to get over that, because I'm a person where I have a lot of love inside. And what Pastor Lot had told me of my strengths and flaws, of having a strong desire to wanting to be used for something, that's good, but there's a dual component to that, which is bad, because you have such a strong wanting to be utilized for something. You could get yourself involved in something that you shouldn't be involved with. Now, even though most, including myself, may assert that I should not have been involved in that, but I was ordained to be involved in that, to suffer through that, in order for me to learn what I'm sharing with you today. So I just want to give a thanks to Pastor Lot, who is still with us. I love you, and I thank you for always being in my corner and supporting me and guiding me and being a really good friend. And so wanted to share this with everyone. I thought this would be longer, but that's pretty much the experience. But as things went on, God would get up in his pulpit and he would assert that the reason why Brother David doesn't come down here anymore is because he wanted Shalon. I got this from Didi. Because I wanted Shalon and Shalon didn't want me. And so I didn't go to the church anymore, which is a lie. He was jealous of me because Shalon was attracted to me. The same thing with Exalt. That's one of the reasons why I asked Sister Bonnie, hey, what if your sister is attracted to me? Is that going to be a problem? This is where all that comes from. But he only said that because he knew why I left. He knew the content of that meeting because Pastor John told him everything that we talked about. And I'm not saying this because of in the act of making this video, but Pastor John did leave. He did leave, and he's serving somewhere in the body of Christ this day. Now, as time went on, I was told that because I didn't hear anything of God anymore, I didn't hear from Richard anymore, I didn't hear from Didi anymore, I didn't hear from anyone anymore. But there is a place out here called, it's on a street out here called Lake Mead. Nevada Partners is a place where you can go get help with food, and you can go there and you can learn a trade and everything. I was there because Richard Steele had a boxing gym there. And one day I was down there, I was talking to Richard Steele and I was talking to brother Sugar Ray Leonard, because Sugar Ray Leonard has a boxing club out here. And so when I found out that Sugar Ray Leonard had a boxing club down there, I found out that he would be down there at a certain time. And so I felt this need to apologize to Sugar Ray Leonard, because Sugar Ray Leonard came to Caesar's Palace one night. I was working as a utility porter, and he happened to be in the very area of where I was cleaning with my partner, and they had the Imperials there playing. And I wanted to meet Sugar Ray Leonard, and his bodyguard told me that he said he didn't want to meet nobody, he just wanted to have fun. Now, by me being a fan of Sugar Ray Leonard, I took offense to that when I shouldn't have. I should have been more mature, because the man can do with his free time whatever he wants. And so not too long after that, me and my trainer at the time, Pat Berry, we were at Nevada Partners, and we was observing his boxing team, and I saw Sugar Ray Leonard across the gym, and I started talking crazy to Sugar Ray Leonard, because I was feeling myself, because I became such a savage boxer. I was feeling myself. I was ignorant. That's what I was. And so I'm yelling over at Sugar Ray Leonard, telling him, "Oh man, I'll beat your ass. We can fight right now." And my trainer was telling me, "You need to chill. That's Sugar Ray Leonard. Who you talking to?" And I told him, "I don't care." Blah, blah, blah. Man, Sugar Ray Leonard would have gotten that ring and whooped my ass. He'd have whooped my ass. And see, I told Pat that I was angry because of my experience with him in the at my job. So here it was, years ago. I'm on my way down there to Nevada Partners, and I'm hearing that Sugar Ray Leonard was down there. So I went down there, and I had approached him. I asked Richard Steele to set up if it's fine, can I talk to him? And he said, "Yeah, go on over there and talk to him." And I said, "No, bro, I need you to come with me. I need you to come with me." And I told him why. And so I talked to Sugar Ray Leonard, and I wanted to apologize to him for my attitude towards him. And he didn't remember. And so I wanted my apology to mean something. So I had to get him to remember that person that was yelling at you across this very gym, that was me. And I wanted to apologize to you. And he accepted my apology. And I thought that was cool. The reason why I bring up my going down to Nevada Partners, during the moment of going down there, I came in contact with a woman who was part of God's congregation. And as I was walking out, she came up to me. She said, "Aren't you Brother David?" I'm like, "Yeah, where do I know you?" She said, "Come on." She said, "Prophet." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I didn't recognize her, but she said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm fine." She said, "You still out here, huh?" And I'm like, yeah, this is where I live. I said, why do you ask me that? She said, Prophet and them, they left. They went to LA. They're in LA right now. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. I said, because I wasn't gonna be giving him all my money, and she started laughing. There was a couple of women behind her started laughing. So they had left. He had quickly relocated to LA. There's even some rumors that he was in Florida for a time, and there's some current rumors that he's out here right now. And so afterwards, that was, I was trying to go around and resolve my differences with everyone. That's pretty much what I'm saying. I wanted to resolve my differences with the Nation of Islam. I wanted to resolve my differences with even the pastors who didn't like me, because of what I was trying to accomplish on the West Side. I wanted to explain to them that I wasn't here to be a discomfort. I wasn't trying to do the body of Christ any harm. I just loved the people, and I just wanted to do something good for the people. So a lot of them accepted my apology, and there was a few who didn't, but that's fine. But when I went into isolation, as I said on another one of my videos, I was invited to a pastor's meeting at Second Baptist Church, and I was present there, but I was totally ignored. And so from that point, as a matter of fact, it was a guy who was the grandson of the founder of Second Baptist Church. His name was Vassar. I used to work with him. He was the one who set up me being there to attend the pastor's meeting. So I'm figuring, well, okay, cool. This is I guess we're all going to come together and we're going to resolve our differences. We're going to put everything on the table. Now, this was after Dot. We're just going to put everything on the table, and we're going to squash everything and just find a way to where we're all going to work together, and we're going to actually do something for the West Side. But I was totally ignored. So I was invited there to be humiliated. And so after that, I just said what I said, that I'm going to go into isolation for the next 5 years, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to return. And see, I didn't tell them that I was in need of studying to assert that I didn't know what I was talking about. I knew exactly what I was what I was talking about. I was going to study so that I can get a more in-depth understanding, so that when I do step back out into the body of Christ, I was going to do a lot of exposing. And so after that, I went into my isolation period. And as history demands, that's when Brother Michael Towns came and he put me out of my isolation, and I got involved with Exalt Ministries, and the rest is history. But I wanted to share this to let people know that a prophet is created and ordained in the womb of a woman. And these people who come out and say that I am a prophet, the prophets of the Bible, they never verbalized that they were prophets, because to their understanding, they were messengers. Now, what verifies the messenger, I say again, as a prophet, one who prophesies of what is to come, is when the fulfiller comes and fulfills what the messengers said. And when the fulfiller fulfills what the messenger says, that verifies the messengers as prophets. That's how that goes. So I greet everyone a good night. I hope that some people got something out of it, but beware of false prophets. They're raven wolves in sheep's clothing, as Yeshua tells you in the word. Beware of them. Be wary of them. With that being said, everyone have a good night. Stay human.